really has changed the way we market, and it's far more now about getting the most relevant customers using what I would describe as pull techniques in marketing. So an example of that might be if on your website, let's say you're hosting an event, you might have a free downloadable white paper for people who are looking for something relevant to your event. Let's say in IT, mobile computing, you might have a survey of mobile computing users that will be of interest to people who might attend your event. They can have it for free if they register and you data capture them. That's what we call pull techniques. They search on the web, they find something of interest, and then you immediately identify that person as an appropriate target for your product. It's not so much about conversion rates anymore, it's more about your conversation rate. And if that short video wasn't enough to convince you that social media is far more than a fad, Google is changing the way it ranks websites. They've announced this. They're actually going to link heavily into social media, and they're going to have real-time updates to Google rankings. So if you're not currently using social media for your business, then you really need to think about it if you want people to find you on the web and have a high search engine ranking. In the past, I've talked about the importance of standing out from the crowd, and I've referred to something called the purple cow concept, which was developed by marketing guru Seth Godin. The concept being, if you drove past field after field of grazing cattle, they'd blend into the background. But if you came across a purple one, you might just stop, pull up the car and get out and have a look. Who remembers the Cadbury's Gorilla advert? Drumming on the... Everybody loved that advert. Well, it created controversy at least anyway. It had nothing to do with chocolate, but it broke through message fatigue. We're actually bombarded with something like 5,000 messages a day. So you need something, when you use traditional media, traditional techniques, you need something that breaks through all of that and stands out. You need to be interesting before you are relevant. When you go into social media, it's almost the opposite. You need to be relevant before you have a reason to speak to that person. The slightly scary thing is that brand reputation is now in the hands of your community. So what I would say is get involved, get in, and have your say in that community. On a more practical level, some of the tools out there. Twitter. Who's on Twitter? Excellent. When I spoke about this a couple of years ago, very few people were on there. In my experience, it's actually quite good for the events sector. With these different tools and techniques, you actually need to identify which channels are most appropriate for your target markets, because some work better than others. Twitter, in my experience, is very good for picking up news, industry news. The events sector in particular is very good at this. But the way to handle Twitter is to use different applications. Anybody using TweetDeck? It's usually a very popular one. A couple of people. These are some of the applications that I will use to manage Twitter accounts. For Mexia, for myself, I'm Mexiac, Mexia K, if anyone would like to follow me. And also to monitor what's happening. TweetDeck allows you to monitor certain keywords, so you can be alerted when someone's mentioned your name, when someone's commented about a topic that interests you. And it also lets you send direct messages to someone, a bit like an email. Once you're connected to someone, you can DM them, direct message them. Social Oomph, which was called Tweet Later service, is a great way for monitoring your mentions. You can set up alerts, and it can actually email you to your email address, if that's more convenient, when you are mentioned or a term that you've put in as a search term is mentioned. Hootsuite is another favourite one of mine. You get a little owl who sits on your browser, and you can tweet out links to interesting stuff that you found, interesting websites, interesting articles, and you can tweet it really, really easily. Hootsuite, I think, is also a really good one for kind of search and follow. If you're trying to find interesting people to follow or people who are talking about certain topics. For example, we recently did some work with, in fact, a social media site called bookrabbit.com, and we went and looked out on Twitter using Social Oomph, I think, initially, to find out who was talking about books. So we did a search on books, on literary, and we found all sorts of interesting people to follow, started to follow them, and got a great following for bookrabbit.com on Twitter. TwitScoop, in particular, I find useful to monitor click-through rates. So if you tweet a link to something, you use the little compressed bit.ly links, compressed URLs. If you register with TwitScoop, you can look at your tweets or other people's tweets, and it will tell you how many people have clicked that link. So that's actually quite a useful one as well. So lots and lots of things out there. How can you actually use it if you're organising an event? Well, obviously, the people who you're targeting need to be on there first of all. So it's a combined effort of finding out who's already on there and also building a following, which I'll talk about in a moment. LinkedIn, many of you mentioned that you're already on LinkedIn, which is an excellent professional networking tool in my view. Obviously, with LinkedIn, you have almost a CV online, so people can see your skills and experience. You can recommend people, they can recommend you, and it's a great way of screening appropriate people to connect with. One great way of using LinkedIn is these discussion groups. I referenced a moment ago one discussion I was involved in a B2B marketing group. There's a Confex group. I also have been involved in the ABCO group and commented on a number of things there and made some great connections through the ABCO group in particular. And in fact, I was speaking at the ABCO event recently up in ACC Liverpool, and a lot of the people there had been dabbling with LinkedIn. Since then, I've actually seen through the network people using it more, updating their status more, and in fact saw one comment recently by a member who said, connected with an old colleague on LinkedIn and have just won a piece of business. Perfect example of what LinkedIn is all about. So if there's not a group out there for you, create one. You can create a group and own it. Update your status regularly, and also now there's an application where you can link to Twitter for double effect. Facebook, generally speaking, I would say my experience is more consumer focused, but it might work well for your events. It depends what type of event you have. It's often banned from use in an office environment. So I've had clients who say, yeah, we've got a Facebook page, but they hadn't realised that all their customers are not actually allowed to access the Facebook page in work hours. So that wasn't really working for them. Generally speaking, my experience, people like to keep Facebook for personal use. It's far more about friends and family than it is about business networking. Although, again, it depends on the sector. There are consumer organisations out there who have huge numbers of fans on Facebook. And also the great example there, Rage Against the Machine, which knocked off the #1 spot for the X Factor guys. And I think I'm running a little behind schedule here, so I'll try and whiz through the last few bits. Lots of other social media outlets appearing. Anyone heard of Google Buzz? Google Wave? Google Wave, next big thing. Google are really pushing these new technologies. Google Wave looks really fascinating and could be very interesting for the meetings and events sector, allowing people to share information real time, join a wave, join in a debate and a discussion, and upload materials. They do require you to have a Google Mail account, and I'm interested to see how that develops, because I'm wondering whether everyone will be happy to have a Google Mail account to use those tools as well. Foursquare, anyone heard of that? Another one hot in the States at the moment, where people are sort of recommending restaurants, and it's all about stuff in your locality, and it links in with phones and iPhones and stuff. Lots of others on there. I could go on and on. YouTube, I just have to say at the bottom, anybody notice the statistic on that video? YouTube is the world's second largest search engine. It's Google, then YouTube. It's not Google, then Yahoo, or Bing or something. It's YouTube. Massive, massively important. Okay, I think I'm just going to finish off with some top tips, and we probably will not have time to do my last section of getting a marketing attitude, so I'll just round up here. The key thing really is investigating which tools are going to be best for your audience. Have a little bit of research into Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook or others, and see who's already on there that might be appropriate targets for you. It's really important that you develop an integrated strategy as well. People have done things like tweet-ups recently, which has worked really well. So not just tweeting or sending out random comments, you're actually working towards a goal. One way I find it is really good is to set up a blog, which you can do for free, and post comments on the blog, tweet links to the blog, or send out LinkedIn update status links, etc. to the blog as well. Make sure that you have simple things like at the end of your email footer, you might want to put your Twitter ID or your LinkedIn status. Have a little link there at the bottom. You'll soon build up a following if you do that. Mention it on your e-newsletters, and obviously I'm sure you've all seen the shortcut buttons on websites with a little Twitter logo or Facebook page logo. Have those on your websites as well. So I think we're going to run out of time to do the marketing attitude. So I'd just really like to wrap up by saying, jump on the social media bandwagon now. It's really going to impact how your business grows over the next few years, and really jump in and join the conversation. I'm happy to answer any questions. I also, in the program, it mentioned that there'll be some free templates and guides and things. I'm happy to offer those to people. I have some marketing planning templates if those are of interest. I also have 1 or 2 articles on social media, which I'm happy to offer people. And if anyone's interested, we do have people who offer social media training. Thank you for listening very much. Thank you.